For today's video, I'm going to be talking about the 4 essential eyeshadow palettes to have in your freelance kit. There's so many eyeshadow palettes to choose from, and it gets really overwhelming when you're trying to grow your kit. So I have my kit right here. As much as I'd like to have all of the trendy palettes that's in right now, it's not always the most realistic to have 10 palettes with you at one time. So the first palette that I'm talking about is the Kat Von D Shade and Light palette. So I highly recommend this palette. So what I like about this palette is that it is all matte. So if you're someone who doesn't want to go purchase individual Makeup Geek eyeshadows or Anastasia eyeshadows and put it in a palette, this is a really good option because you get your core matte shades, you get your cool tones, you get your warm tones, and you get your neutral tones. This is a palette that you could use just for one entire look, or you could pull different shades for a look. Let's say if you needed a warm tone brown, if you needed a cool gray transition shade, or if you wanted the more rusty and peachy tones, you have it here. The second essential eyeshadow palette would be the Modern Renaissance palette by Anastasia Beverly Hills. You're guaranteed to get a client who wants warm toned eyeshadow. It's really popular and it's really flattering. And while this palette is really hyped up, it is an amazing palette to include in your freelance kit. If you get a client who wants that warm red eyeshadow, you could easily create it using this palette. If you get someone who just wants a warm orangey undertone, you can use it creating this palette. If you want someone who wants a pink eyeshadow, then you can use it creating this palette. You can honestly do a lot with this palette. It isn't just a one-dimensional palette. You don't just get one look from it. I've honestly created myself different looks from this palette, and I've seen other people create amazing looks with this palette. How many times can I say this palette? What's also nice is that majority of this is matte, but you get these two really pretty, I think they're more of like a foiled shadow, Vermeer and Primavera. One is like a pinky icy tone, and then the other is more of a golden undertone. I feel like for grad season and prom season, this is a really good palette. If you do get a client who doesn't want an intense eye, you can still use this palette. You can go into Warm Taupe, you can go into Cyrus Umber, and then just put one of the foiled shadows on the lid, and you really have a really pretty look. The third palette is the Morphe 35O palette. So once again, this palette is warm toned. Technically, you don't need both, but because warm tones are really popular, I think both of these do give different looks, and you can do different looks and different variations in warm tones using both of these palettes. So it's up to your discretion if you think you need both, but personally for me, I do find that they give two different looks. So once again, you could do the classic warm tone, bronzy, reddy, orangey look on the eye. It's pretty easy to do that with this palette. But you do also have just some very core basic brown shades that all kind of look the same, but they are a little bit different. What's nice about this palette, it is complementary to different skin tones. This works really well on someone who's fair like me, but I've also seen it look beautiful on deeper skin tones. Also, the price of this one compared to the Kat Von D palette and the Modern Renaissance palette is considerably lower, and you get a lot of shades to choose from. This palette is a little bit hyped up, but it is a really good palette to keep in your kit. You really can't go wrong with it. Now, the last palette I decided to include is optional. It is the Morphe 35B palette. So you never really know when you're gonna come across a client who wants a bright pop of color. You really have to be prepared for anything. So if you do want to invest in one more eyeshadow palette, I would invest in a color palette that has a variation of fun and crazy colors. Once again, Morphe is really nice and affordable, so you're not really gonna break your wallet by going in and getting this palette. It does keep you safe if you happen to get that client who wants a pop of color, and the shadows itself are really nice. I've been reaching into this palette a lot lately, and I know it looks pretty intimidating, but you can pull from these colors and include it in a more toned down look, and it still works really well. So what all these palettes have in common is that they're blendable, so you can work fast and efficient. They have different variants of color. You have cool tones, and then the two have warm tones. I think investing in at least 3 to 4 core essential palettes will really take you a long way. Building your freelance kit can be really expensive, and it can also be overwhelming. You don't need every single palette that is hyped up. As you start growing your clientele over the years, that's when you start to grow your kit. You're going to need to replenish and replace items. Slowly, gradually, and naturally is when your kit really starts to build. Also, my freelance kit is this size. It's not huge. It's not like a Zuka bag or one of those really big carry pulling cases. I'm really only including realistically what I need. If you did find this video helpful, then I would love if you could like, subscribe, and comment down below.
Baby, I believe in